313 men faced nearly 1,000, and among them stood a man whose first world had been the dark interior of the Kaaba. How does a youth raised in the Prophet's household become the unbending pillar of a community that faced annihilation? As Al-Tabari records the figures of Badr, the numbers make the choice visible. This was not merely courage, it was a wager on faith. The stakes could not have been higher. If the small band from Medina failed, the fledgling ummah would be crushed, the Prophet's mission snuffed, and the companions scattered. Long before the caravans met in the sand, the foundation for that wager was laid in Mecca. Ali ibn Abi Talib's birth and upbringing, his earliest conversion, and the daily service to the Prophet that formed his niyyah. Ibn Hisham preserves the tradition that Ali was born in the Kaaba and raised in the immediate care of the Messenger. Ibn Kathir and Ibn al-Athir recount his youth at the Prophet's side, learning devotion and restraint before he ever drew a sword. The strategic challenge was existential and personal. In Mecca, a small circle of believers met covertly at Dar al-Arqam. They were exposed, outnumbered, and hunted by a tribal order that held power by prestige and force. Ali's decision to embrace Islam as a boy, recorded by Ibn Kathir and Ibn al-Athir, was not an abstract act of theology, but a tactical commitment to bind his life to one man and one mission. By living within the Prophet's household, he accepted a role that would demand secrecy, patience, and an unflinching readiness for peril. The first great test of that readiness came not on an open field, but in a single night. When the Prophet prepared to migrate to Medina, a plot of pursuit closed upon the city. According to Ibn Hisham and Al-Tabari, Ali volunteered to replace the Prophet in the bed, to present his body as the decoy while the messenger slipped away. The choice carried the highest human risk. Discovery meant death, and it carried moral weight, a deliberate act of self-sacrifice rooted in tawakkul and loyalty. This was strategy guided by akhlaq and niyyah, not merely calculation. Doubt shadowed that night. Sources record that Ali was young, that the danger was real, and that even the bravest felt the weight of possible failure. Ibn al-Athir notes the scouts and the searches. Al-Tabari describes the tension in Mecca's alleys as friends and foes closed in. For a moment, the problem was not tactics, but trust. Could a single man's sacrifice hold against a determined enemy? Could devotion translate into deliverance? The payoff arrived in the subtle arithmetic of delay. By placing himself in harm's way, Ali allowed the Prophet to vanish into the desert and the community to survive. The act transformed the theoretical loyalty of childhood into a proven instrument of communal survival. It forged a reputation of fearlessness paired with piety that would follow him into every later council and battlefield. Yet survival at Mecca's exit was only the opening of a far greater test. The same community that fled now faced an army in the sands. At Badr, 313 believers against nearly 1,000 Quraish, as Al-Tabari and Ibn al-Athir make clear. How would the lessons of a child's pledge and a night's sacrifice shape the man who must now stand in the face of overwhelming numbers? The answer will be decided where the dunes meet the sky, and the first clash is only hours away. EVNTSCOVID. Birth in the Kaaba and upbringing, Ali's early conversion and service, Ali's night in the Prophet's bed, Battle of Badr setup. 313 verses ~1, 000. One man, facing the might of the Quraysh, would decide the fate of the new faith. According to Ibn al-Athir in Al-Kamil fi al-Tariq, in the year 2 AH, a force of 313 Muslims stood against a Quraysh army of nearly 1,000. How did a small band of believers, armed with little but conviction, survive this first existential test? The answer lay not just in strategy, but in the character of a single champion, Ali ibn Abi Talib. The survival of the Muslim community in Medina depended on this confrontation at the wells of Badr. As Ibn Kathir narrates in Al-Bidayah wa al-Nihaya, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, positioned the Muslims to control the water, forcing the larger Meccan army to fight at a disadvantage and in the midday heat. The strategic reasoning was clear. Negate their numerical superiority by controlling the critical resource and choosing the ground. The Quraish, led by Abu Jahl, were confident their veteran warriors and vast numbers would crush the Muslims once and for all. But the battle began not with a chaotic charge, but with a ritual of single combat, a tradition of Arab warfare. 3 of the Quraysh's mightiest champions, Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, his brother Shayba, and his son Walid ibn Utbah stepped forward to challenge. The Muslims answered with Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, and Ubaidah ibn al-Harith. As Al-Tabari records in his Tariq, Ali faced Walid, a renowned warrior. Here was the crisis, the moment of impossible choice and weight. The young Ali, though known for his courage, was facing a seasoned killer. The duel was a microcosm of the entire struggle, faith and raw courage against experience and hatred. The resolution was swift and decisive. Ali ibn Abi Talib struck Walid down. Hamza dispatched Shayba. Ubaidah was wounded, but managed to kill Utbah before being rescued. This triple victory shattered the morale of the Quraysh vanguard, even before the main lines clashed. The tactical payoff was immediate. As Ibn al-Athir notes, the Muslim ranks, inspired by the feats of their champions, surged forward with a unity and fervor the divided Quraysh could not withstand. The battle turned into a rout, with several key leaders of the Quraysh, including Abu Jahl, left dead on the field. The victory at Badr was a miracle of faith, and at its heart was the Lion of God, Ali. Yet the very decisiveness of this triumph guaranteed a fiercer response. The Quraysh would return, seeking vengeance for their dead and humiliation. The letter of defiance was already written in the blood spilt at the well. EVNTSCOVID, the Battle of Badr, the Champions' Duel. In the year 656, the Islamic world stood at a crossroads. With only 1,000 warriors at his side, Ali ibn Abi Talib faced an impossible choice. Engage the 10,000-strong army of the rebels in Basra, or retreat and risk the collapse of the caliphate. The stakes could not have been higher. As Ibn al-Athir recorded in Al-Kamil fi al-Tariq, the rebellion led by Aisha, Talha, and Zubair had grown into a formidable force, threatening the unity of the Muslim community. Ali's strategic mind was put to the test. The rebels had gathered in Basra, a city known for its strategic importance and its vast open plains, which favored cavalry charges, something the rebels had in abundance. Ali, however, had fewer troops but possessed something far more valuable: unshakable faith and a deep understanding of the terrain. Ali chose a defensive position outside Basra, near the ancient canal of Al-Jamal. He positioned his troops in a manner that nullified the rebels' numerical advantage. By digging trenches and using the natural geography to funnel the enemy into killing zones, Ali aimed to turn the rebels' strength into a liability. As Al-Tabari reported in Tariq al-Rusul wa al-Mulak, Ali's tactical reasoning was clear. He would force the enemy to attack on his terms, not theirs. But doubt crept in. Scouts reported that the rebels were well supplied and confident, their morale boosted by the presence of Aisha, the Prophet's wife. Ali paused. The weight of his decision was immense. If he failed, the caliphate could fracture, and the bloodshed would be catastrophic. Yet, as Ibn Kathir noted in Al-Bidayah wa al-Nihaya, Ali's unwavering trust in Allah's decree never wavered. He knew that victory lay not just in numbers, but in the righteousness of his cause. The battle began with the rebels launching a series of cavalry charges, aiming to break Ali's lines. However, Ali's defensive preparations proved their worth. The trenches and the confined terrain forced the enemy into disarray, allowing Ali's smaller, more disciplined forces to strike with precision. The rebels, despite their numbers, found themselves at a disadvantage. Ali's strategy was working. Yet the battle was far from over. The rebels, desperate and disorganized, began to falter. But Ali, ever the tactician, knew that mercy was as important as victory. He ordered his men to spare those who surrendered, a testament to his character and devotion to justice. As Ibn Khaldun observed in Al-Muqaddimah, Ali's reign was marked by his unwavering commitment to fair judgment and compassion, even in the heat of battle. As the dust settled, the rebels' army lay in ruin. Aisha was escorted safely back to Medina, and the immediate threat to the caliphate was neutralized. But the victory came at a cost. The bloodshed had been immense, and the divisions within the Muslim community ran deep. Ali knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. In the days that followed, a new threat emerged. The Kharijites, disillusioned by the conflict, began to gather in the deserts of Iraq, their numbers growing by the day. They rejected Ali's authority, branding him a tyrant. The letter that arrived that night would change everything. EVNTSCOVID. Battle of the Camel, Ali's defensive strategy, emergence of the Kharijites. The year is 38 AH. The fragmented caliphate teeters, and the very fabric of the nascent Muslim state is stretched thin. In the heart of Iraq, a pivotal confrontation looms, a testament to the strategic brilliance and unwavering resolve of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the commander of the faithful. His loyal forces, numbering a mere 15,000 men, stood poised against a formidable enemy, the rebels of Muawiyah, whose army swelled to an alarming 60,000. The stakes were immeasurable. A defeat here could unravel the unity painstakingly forged by the Prophet Muhammad. Arabic Sada, Arabic Lam, Arabic Khalif Muksura, Arabic Khalif, Arabic Lam, Arabic Lam, Arabic Ha, Arabic Tain, Arabic Lam, Arabic Yet, Arabic Ha, Arabic Wow, Arabic Sin, Arabic Lam, Arabic Meme, and his immediate successors. The very soul of Islam, its territorial integrity and the nascent community, hung precariously in the balance. The vast plains near Siffin, a strategic location along the Euphrates River, became the crucible for this epic clash. As Al-Tabari meticulously records in his Tariq al-Rusul wa al-Mulak, Ali's army was initially denied access to the vital waters of the Euphrates by the opposing forces. This was a deliberate tactic to weaken and demoralize Ali's men, a strategy designed to break their spirit before the swords were even drawn. The desert sun beat down relentlessly, and the thirst would have been a torment multiplier, a cruel psychological weapon. Ali, ever the astute strategist, understood the gravity of this situation. He knew that directly assaulting the entrenched enemy at the riverbanks would be costly, potentially suicidal. Instead, he chose a path of calculated patience and strategic maneuver. He dispatched a contingent of his most trusted warriors, not for an all-out assault, but to reclaim control of the river itself. As Ibn al-Athir notes in Al-Kamil fi al-Tariq, this was a move of audacious brilliance. Ali did not seek to engage the enemy in a pitched battle under their terms, but to disrupt their tactical advantage and restore the basic necessities for his own troops. The ensuing skirmish for control of the Euphrates was fierce, a prelude to the main conflagration. Ali's warriors, fueled by their faith and the command of their imam, fought with a ferocity that belied their numbers. They pushed back the rebels, securing a vital lifeline for their army. This strategic victory, though costly in terms of lives, was a masterstroke. It shifted the psychological momentum and denied the enemy their planned advantage. Yet the battle for Siffin was far from over. With the river secured, Ali faced the daunting prospect of engaging a force 4 times the size of his own. The days turned into a brutal exchange of blows. As Ibn Kathir describes in Al-Bid'ah wa al-Nihaya, the fighting was so intense that the ground beneath the armies seemed to tremble for 3 days. Ali himself, renowned for his courage and prowess, was at the forefront, rallying his men, his presence a beacon of unwavering resolve. But the sheer weight of numbers began to tell. Ali's generals reported mounting casualties, and the enemy, though suffering heavily, still possessed a formidable reserve. Doubt, a rare visitor, began to cast its shadow. Could even the most inspired defense hold against such overwhelming odds for much longer? The future of the caliphate, it seemed, rested on a razor's edge, and the next move would determine the fate of an empire. EVNTSCOVID, Battle for the Euphrates, Battles of Siffin. With roughly 80,000 men facing approximately 120,000 across the broad sweep of the Euphrates plain, Ali ibn Abi Talib confronted a choice that would decide not only a battle, but the fate of the Muslim polity. As Al-Tabari reports in his Tariq, the 2 hosts arrayed on opposite banks near Siffin. As Ibn al-Athir records, the numbers were overwhelming and the stakes mortal. If Ali failed, the unity forged under the Prophet and the rightly guided caliphs would fracture into permanent rival courts. Ibn Kathir reminds us that Ali's intention, his niyyah, was to preserve the community and to judge by God's law, not to grasp worldly rule. The risk was not only strategic defeat, but the loss of moral authority. Muslim against Muslim, blood spilled over the question of justice for the slain Caliph Uthman ibn Affan and the legitimacy of governance. The battlefield itself was cruelly simple and decisive. Siffin lay on the banks of the Euphrates near the district of Raqqa, a flat riverine ground favoring massed cavalry and extended lines. Al-Tabari describes Ali's disposition at the camp of the Muslim north of the river, with his veterans from Kufa and Medina arrayed in disciplined bodies. Ibn al-Athir details Muawiyah's hosts holding the Syrian side, their banners steady and reserves numerous. Ali's tactical reasoning was plain and devout. He sought to prevent needless slaughter, to use maneuver and the moral clarity of his cause rather than rash charges, to protect the civilian populations of Kufa and Basra, and to force a decision that would answer the question of leadership by right and law. Ibn Kathir emphasizes that Ali's calculus began from justice and restraint, not from a hunger for conquest. As the fighting stretched, both sides suffered. According to Al-Tabari, the clash saw days of probing, cavalry engagements, and volleys of arrows. Ibn al-Athir narrates the exhaustion and the mounting cries for an end. Then a turning moment. Some of Muawiyah's men lifted copies of the Quran on their lances, calling for judgment by the book. The sight and the cry, recorded by both Al-Tabari and Ibn al-Athir, created confusion in the ranks and a moral dilemma for Ali. To refuse judgment by God's book would have been a scandal. To accept a human-brokered settlement risked compromising his cause. Faced with this, Ali paused. According to Ibn al-Athir, scouts brought word of mounting casualties and the pleas of communities wearied by war. Ali's human side showed. He hesitated, weighed the counsel of his companions, and felt the burden of every life under his command. His akhlaq, justice, humility, and mercy, pushed him toward arbitration as a means to stop Muslim bloodletting. Al-Tabari records that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and Amr ibn al-As were named as arbitrators to judge, a strategic choice intended to settle the dispute without further slaughter. The immediate payoff was a cessation of open combat. The standard-bearers lowered their spears, and the battle's roar fell. But the political calculus would not be so neat. Ibn Khaldun later observes that arbitration, though intended to restore order, exposed fractures in authority and judgment. What seemed a prudent restraint became a wound. What nobody yet knew was how that single decision, to have men judge men where God's law was invoked, would produce a new, fanatical dissent. From the ranks arose those who would declare loudly, "No judgment but God's," reject both arbitrators, and walk away to a fate that would force Ali to fight again. The field at Siffin lay quiet for the moment, but the echo of that raised Quran would trace the path to the next, bloodier confrontation. EVNTSCOVID. Battle of Siffin, arbitration at Siffin, emergence of the Kharijite schism. In the immediate, stunned vacuum following the death of the Prophet Muhammad in 632 CE, the Muslim community in Medina stood at the edge of an abyss. The succession was an unresolved matter of monumental peril. With the Ansar of Medina gathered in the Saqafa of Banu Saida to debate leadership, Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah moved with decisive urgency to preserve the unity of the ummah. According to Al-Tabari in his Tariq, they argued persuasively that leadership must remain with the Quraish, the tribe of the Prophet, to maintain the political cohesion of the nascent state. Abu Bakr was swiftly acknowledged as the Khalifa, the successor. Yet one pivotal voice was absent from this council: Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was consumed with the burial rites of his cousin, the messenger of God. The stakes could not have been higher. Failure to secure the allegiance of Ali, the Prophet's closest kinsman, his first male believer, and a figure of immense spiritual and martial authority risked a fatal schism. Ibn al-Athir notes in Al-Kamil fi al-Tariq that a segment of the Banu Hashim and their supporters initially held back, believing Ali to have a prior right. The unity forged through decades of sacrifice in Mecca and Medina hung in the balance. The strategic challenge was not military, but moral and political. It was a test of whether the community's allegiance to the greater good could transcend personal or clan-based claims. The geographic center of this tension was Medina itself, from its simple mosque to the homes of the Muhajirin. Ali's tactical reasoning was rooted in a profound, patient understanding of the greater objective. As recorded by Al-Tabari, he remained at home for a period, deeply grieving and considering his position. His strategic calculation was one of principle over power. He saw the paramount need to prevent fitna discord and civil strife from tearing apart the ummah in its most vulnerable hour. His decision was not born of weakness, but of immense strength and foresight. He weighed his own potential claim against the clear and present danger of division. The moment of crisis and doubt was internal and profound. Could he, in good conscience, pledge allegiance when he felt his right had been overlooked? The human side of the hero is revealed here. Ibn Kathir, in Al-Bidayah wa al-Nihaya, recounts that Ali was initially resolved not to pledge allegiance until he was approached by his mother's sister. She urged him not to be the first to break the unity of the Muslims. This personal, familial counsel highlighted the weight of the choice. It was a struggle between a personal sense of justice and the overwhelming imperative of communal survival. According to the narrations, he paused, reflecting on the legacy of the Prophet and the catastrophe of discord. The resolution was an act of supreme moral clarity and sacrifice. After a period, the exact length debated by historians, but whose significance is unanimous. Ali ibn Abi Talib went to the mosque. In a public act that sealed the community's unity, he offered his hand and his oath of allegiance to Abu Bakr. Al-Tabari reports that Ali stated his delay was not due to contesting Abu Bakr's worthiness, but to his belief in his own close connection to the Prophet. By submitting to the established caliphate, he elevated the sanctity of the ummah above all else. This strategic payoff was total. It dismantled any potential center of opposition and solidified the political foundation of the Rashidun Caliphate. But the letter that arrived from the frontiers of Arabia would change everything. A new threat was already rising, one that would demand the sword of Ali once more. EVNTSCOVEID. The succession crisis after the Prophet's death, Ali ibn Abi Talib's oath of allegiance to Abu Bakr,